Few things are less pleasant to wake up to than a "don't panic, everything will be fine" message from your investors, but I, like many of you, started my morning out with just that. And what you'll note from my communications is that my company took the extra step of making sure you had a reference point for the other times in recent history that Trump has put tariffs in place and screwed us all. Strangely, I do not feel comforted by that message, and neither do most other investors, as the stock market continues its fall in response to Trump's trade war.
Shares on Wall Street have slumped today, led by the Nasdaq, which plunged by as much as 4% at one point earlier. The sell-off is driven by concerns about the impact of President Trump's trade policies on the US economy. Investors are worried that a trade war could push the economy into some sort of recession.
Now, several of you have been asking me to weigh in on this subject. I've seen your comments. This person said, please, 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 can we get your take on the trade war? I'm a Canadian, and I think these tariffs are ridiculous personally, and our counter tariffs are even dumber. Our cost of living is much higher up here in the north, and our government is a disaster. Would love your take. And another person said, hi, I know this is off topic, but I would really like to know your opinion. Can you please do a video on the stock market plunging and Trump saying there may be a recession? So you got it, dude. Let's talk about tariffs, a potential recession, and what that means for all of us. First, I'm Hannah Cox. Welcome to my channel where I bring you my politically homeless takes on politics and culture. Before we get started, take a second to like this video, drop me a comment, say hi, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell so you get reminders for all new videos. One of the reasons I have been delaying this video, which is really a follow-up because I've talked about trade and I've talked about tariffs quite a bit in my history, but honestly, right now, the subject just gives me a lot of anxiety, okay? I've been trying my best, not to make eye contact with it. We are in a precarious position as a society, and the libertarians have been trying to warn the rest of you about this for well over a decade. And per usual, you just won't listen. Nobody ever listens to the libertarians. We are up to our eyeballs in debt. Republicans and Democrats have spent us into oblivion over the past couple of decades, but in particular over the past 9 years. And then they shut down our economy simultaneously. It was a recipe for disaster all along. There should have been a giant crash in 2020. It has always been so sus to me that there was not. I remember when COVID was first happening, just bracing for it, getting ready for it. I was in New York City. I was like, well, I don't own property, so how bad can it get? But I was ready for the sky to fall down on my head. And then every month it just kept not. And it didn't make any sense how everything was not completely collapsing. And this is one reason I am not convinced that the stock market is really a free market capitalist institution, at least not in the way that it operates in the US. I literally see the stock market as akin to gambling. I see it like a casino. It's not based on anything real. It can be manipulated and propped up by various interests and by the government. And I don't trust it. I obviously invest in it because what choice do we have? I'm not a financial whiz, but I just have to say none of this has made sense to me. You cannot spend billions of dollars, print tons and tons of new dollar bills while also shutting down supply, shutting down the economy, limiting GDP, and not have a recession. It doesn't make sense. Now, obviously, we've been living with the inflation from all of that, but it still should have been so much different than it has been. So I feel like I'm saying all this to say that if the sky does come falling down on our heads, it feels long overdue in many ways. And not only did you have Trump and then Biden pursue that kind of spending and the lockdowns, you then had Biden and the progressive camp come in and strangle our economy with regulations and an insane antitrust agenda attacking some of our best producers, best companies in the US. They were such an enemy of American innovation and business owners. They were disgusting. That administration will go down as one of the worst in our history. They lied about the job reports. They were lying all along. I called this out. They were completely inflating them. They were gaslighting people on the economy. And they had all these little puppets in the media that were just yeah, the economy's great. Republicans don't know what they're talking about.
To really understand the sleight of hand that is at play here, you have to understand how to read the jobs reports. These reports are done by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, BLS for short, and they come out every month. It's worth noting that the BLS is a government agency. And again, they're claiming that every month, hundreds of thousands of jobs are being created, which would be great if it were really true. But if you scroll down past the headline, it doesn't really seem that's exactly the case. First and foremost, 10 of 11 of the monthly job reports in 2023 had to be revised down significantly, meaning they came out and claimed that a ton of jobs had been created and then quietly revised that a few weeks down the road. Unsurprisingly, the media and the general public don't usually pay as much attention to those revisions. So there's your first problem. They are usually not creating as many jobs as they claim. But even more importantly, you need to look at the kinds of jobs that are being created. I'm going to pull some data from the September 2023 jobs report. And according to headlines at that time, non-farm payrolls had jumped a stunning 336,000 in September of 2023, while the unofficial unemployment rate stayed flat at 3.8%. It's pretty weird to have all these new jobs added and yet unemployment not fall. Don't you think? But it gets even more sus than that. Of those 336,000 jobs they added, over 22% of them were government jobs. A government job is not equal to a job in the private market. People who are working in the private sector are productive. They are contributing to economic growth. They are creating value. People who are working in the public sector only survive based off of the backs of the people working in the private market.
And now re-enter Trump, who has never been an economic whiz. It continues to blow my mind, the number of people on the right that just think he is like really good on capitalism or really good on the economy. He's not. He wasn't his first term. And there's been no indication he would be for a second term. But a lot of you did this to us and we now have to live with the consequences. So Trump has spent the last week basically bullying Congress to pass a continuing resolution that would keep us at Biden spending levels. And he's been so insistent on this that he actually started attacking and even threatening to primary the one good congressman we have, Thomas Massie out of Kentucky, who has been completely principled on this issue for some time. The man wears a debt clock like calculator that he made, huge nerd, debt calculator pin that he made that's counting down or up rather as we keep spending. He always votes against increasing our spending. He's one of the only ones that actually understands economics, again, because he's a big old nerd and a libertarian. So you ought to listen to him. But of course, he's like standing by himself, getting thrown under the bus left and right. And Trump tried to attack him the same that he did when Massie was the only Republican, I think the only congressional member actually, to vote against the stimulus spending in 2019. And he predicted back then it would lead to record high inflation. It would be devastating for the American economy. And Trump attacked him then and tried to primary him then too. It didn't work. But point being, like, Thomas Massie has already been proven once right against Trump, and he'll be proven right this time again. But that's what Trump has been doing. And then, of course, pursuing his disastrous trade war against our allies at the same time. What is weird to me are the I regret my vote kind of people in this whole scenario. Like, this guy posted a screenshot of the stock market tumbling and he said, okay, I'll put my pronouns in my bio, which is hilarious. But Trump is not doing anything that you should not have anticipated. He's doing exactly what he ran on. He's always been into mercantilism, and he's always had this real affinity for tariffs, even though they were a disaster when he tried to use them during his first term. I don't think he's smart, first and foremost. I really don't. And he's got to hang up with them. And he talked about using them if he were to be reelected. Writing was on the wall. I mean, it was very easy to predict what he was going to do and to be right about him all along. So I'm confused about people's negative reactions towards this who were supporters of his initially. On top of all of that, tariffs are the one thing, I've said this on the show before, tariffs are the one thing that economists from across the political spectrum of economic theory tend to agree on. They agree that they're bad, that they hurt an economy, that the costs get passed on to the actual people, that governments don't pay tariffs, people do. So not only should you have known Trump was going to do this, you should have known it was going to be bad. There were plenty of people telling you that all along. In fact, here I am just a couple months ago debunking Steven Crowder on this topic. I hate this line that he tries to do, this the more you understand about tariffs and they're just a bargaining tool, the smarter you'll be. I hear this all the time online. Trump is just playing chess. You don't get it. He's a great debater. He's a great negotiator. He's a negotiating genius. Here's a few examples of this brain-broken argument online. Do you actually believe that will go through? You're a fool. Dude, it's a negotiation tactic. Tariffs are leverage. Tariffs are a negotiation tactic, art of the deal stuff. Always have a credible threat that you can unsheath if needed. Senator Chuck Grassley downplayed Trump's threats of broad tariffs against major U.S. trading partners as a negotiating tool, but he did note concern regarding the potential for another trade war. U.S. farmers are still reeling from Trump's 2018 actions. Yes, they are. Because guess what? They're not a negotiation tool. He's serious about them. Now, did he say he would go after Canada? I had another person ask me if I had addressed that previously. No, I hadn't. He hadn't specifically said he was going to go after Canada. His plans really weren't all that fleshed out in general. He just said he wanted tariffs. But here's the thing. Trump's crazy. So nothing can truly surprise me anymore. I'm so jaded. And he also did put tariffs on Canada in 2018. So it's not exactly beyond the pale. Like this isn't something where it feels like a gotcha or who could have predicted. And not only did he put tariffs on Canada, but it went abysmally bad, by the way. The tariffs were meant to protect American steel and aluminum manufacturers, but of course they had unintended consequences for other industries. Say it with me. Unintended consequences. You always have to think about those when you're trying to put a policy in place. And so quite predictably, other sectors that depended on these raw materials, like the automobile manufacturers and construction companies, food and beverage industry, machinery and equipment manufacturers, they all had to end up paying more for their raw materials. So then they faced higher costs that reduced their profits. They had to cut jobs or delay their expansion. And ultimately, according to a report from the Trade Partnership Worldwide, it's estimated that while the tariffs saved about 8,700 jobs in steel and aluminum industries, they caused approximately 75,000 net job losses in these other American industries due to those tariffs. Predictable and predicted. Just a lot of you didn't listen. And the second round of Trump's tariffs is going pretty much exactly as you would expect it to if you had like economic 101 literacy. The new tariffs on imports from Canada and Mexico are projected to increase U.S. consumer prices by approximately 1.2% over the next year. Economists are estimating that these tariffs could reduce U.S. GDP growth by 0.6 to 1 percentage points this year, potentially slowing down the economy. Remember, I said that's the one thing that's been like keeping us afloat. You're also likely going to see a lot of job losses, similar to what happened in 2018. At the same time, Trump is also flooding the job market with a lot of laid off federal employees who will then be competing for those jobs. Oh, and the S&P 500 index fell by 1.8%, and the NASDAQ 100 index dropped by 2.6%. By March 6th of last week, the S&P 500 had lost nearly all of its gains since November 2024. And that's just in our country. It's going really badly in Canada as well, where this is very likely going to also push them into a recession, and their people are going to have a lot of job losses and misery. It's all very, very senseless. These are not retaliatory tariffs. These are, nobody quite knows what he thinks he's going to achieve here. Purportedly, initially, he thought these tariffs would force Canada to clamp down on their border and stop the flow of illegal immigrants and drugs. But the problem was there was never that much coming from Canada in the first place. Like that argument, while I think it still would not be effective and work, at least makes sense when you're talking about Mexico and their border. With Canada, it simply doesn't track. And then in many of his meetings with Canadian leadership, Trump has begun to indicate that he wants far more, that he wants access to a lot of their sectors, that he's trying to even maybe do some land grabs or get control of their water. Like it's getting very, very weird and very aggressive. And if you know anything about history, these kinds of trade wars often turn into real wars due to these very real reasons and underlying causes and motivations that are at play. But I'll pause here. Let me know if this has impacted you yet. I'm particularly curious to hear from any business owners. Did you expect this would happen? Did you anticipate it? Are you taking any precautions? Are you pulling your money out of the stock market? I can't lie. I know it's like timing the market and not timing the market, but I really want to like jack some money out right now. Anyways, let me know your comments. I'm curious for your thoughts. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel while you're doing it. Now on to the question that is first and foremost on everyone's mind, which is, will this push us into a recession? The chances are pretty high. As I said, I think we should have had one for years now, and the powers that be have been somewhat staving it off. There have been signs of it. We have been living with some of the symptoms of a recession, but it has been staved off due to the GDP being high and due to the stock market being mysteriously high. In a normal economy, which I can't say ours is due to the amount the government is interfering with it, it's in no way a like pure capitalist economy. But it is typical to see ebbs and flows in an economy. It's typical to have down years. It's typical to have some recessions, not to necessarily have great recessions or even depressions. That's usually due to government meddling badly in the market, but like some recessions. And so the fact that they, I think, have been pulling levers to prevent a full recession from happening makes this feel even more precarious to me and even more likely that the bottom's going to fall out. I feel similarly to how I would have felt if I had been an adult in 2008, knowing what I now know about the banks failing, is that there were so many levers being pulled behind the scenes. There were so many house of cards being built. If you weren't in the financial industry, you probably weren't privy to those things going on, but eventually a crack happened and the entire thing collapsed. My suspicion is the exact same thing has been going on with the US economy, particularly since 2020. And I don't have all the inside baseball information, but I do feel pretty certain in my gut we're going to see a similar crack and crash at some point. As for the people who are experts at this, the major banks, including JP Morgan Chase and Goldman Sachs, have increased their recession risk estimates for 2025. And as everybody is acknowledging, the market is definitely volatile right now. Markets don't like unpredictability, and I think there's nothing less predictable than Trump. Now, Trump and his cultists are arguing that some pullback, maybe even a recession, is necessary in order to correct all of the things that the Biden administration did over the past 4 years, but that the pain will be temporary.
I hate to predict things like that. There is a period of transition because what we're doing is very big. We're bringing wealth back to America. That's a big thing. And there are always periods of, it takes a little time. It takes a little time.
And now we've got tariffs and the market has been going down.
Well, not much. I mean, in all fairness.
You said, look, we're going to have a disruption, but we're okay with that. Is that what you meant? The stock market going down was the disruption? What other disruption were you alluding to?
Look, what I have to do is build a strong country. You can't really watch the stock market.
And I think there could be a little truth to this. Financial markets often do react very swiftly to policy announcements and lead to short-term volatility. And so, that might be what we're living with right now. And maybe the confidence will come back and maybe things will even out. But ultimately, I think that argument from them only works if you think tariffs are good for the country and for the economy in the long run. And there is absolutely no evidence and no economic science to suggest that that is the case. Ultimately, my stance on tariffs is that they are always bad and that the goal should be to get to free trade, true capitalism between countries. The only exception I guess I would make, and I still don't think this would be my move if I was president, but I guess I could be convinced that having retaliatory tariffs specifically to force other countries to reduce their own tariffs they have placed against us is the only thing that actually makes any sense. But that's not what he's doing at all. And really, when countries put tariffs in place against us, that actually just hurts their people because we are less likely to purchase from them and to go and purchase from other countries who are friendlier towards us or to rely on our own manufacturing. So even then, like I said, I still don't think it's that strategic of a move because of the propensity for these kinds of tariffs to create economic instability, to create global tensions, to create even wars ultimately. It just wouldn't be a tool in my toolkit. Regardless, though, he's not putting in place retaliatory tariffs. He is doing this very willy-nilly. He is attacking allies. He is attacking some of our biggest trading partners. He is attacking our neighbors. He is creating tension between these countries. I, again, truly cannot figure out exactly what his goal is. I think the whole Canada should just be a state is a joke, but I'm really not sure at this point. I can't tell for sure. And if it's not a joke, it makes even less sense because Canadians are far to the left of where most Americans are, support way more socialism. So I don't know why you would want to be importing millions of voters who feel that way into our country. And furthermore, given what this is doing to Canada's own economy, the sentiment against Americans and against Trump has certainly turned sour over there. There is a huge agenda for them to not buy from America. They have elected a much more left-wing government than it seemed like they were about to put in place before Trump did this. Like, none of this has really been favorable to the MAGA camp. If anything, it has increased hostility towards it. So not only do you now have an enemy, but it's certainly not one that you would want to add to your country because they're not going to be on your side. But again, I have never made the mistake of thinking Trump or his devotees are especially smart. So yeah, that's where we're at. I am happy to answer other questions that you have in the comments, but I think that covers the gist of it. And I unfortunately feel like we are likely in for a pretty tough year. So buckle up. All right, guys, I hope you like this episode. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to my channel. And if you want even more content, you can head over to platforms like Twitter or TikTok or Instagram to follow me too.